All right, welcome everybody to today's Sip and Solve. I am going to girl fan out today, so please excuse me in advance. So let's get started with today's conversation. I'm so excited to be talking to Imani Joy Samuels.
Catherine, such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, you're such an inspiration, and I cannot wait to talk about all the things. I actually did not ask Imani a ton of questions in advance so that I could also be surprised along with everybody watching. So, Imani, why don't you just start by introducing yourself and talk a little bit about the work that you're doing at Huru?
Sure, of course. First of all, such a gift to share space with you and for you creating and convening folks to just learn and internalize. I am Imani Samuels. I am the founder and CEO of Huru, which is Swahili. It means free. And at Huru, we design rest experiences. We craft them for folks who are yearning for rest, who are seeking transformation or reflection, and also for folks who are imagining a new season for their life. And so we're excited to offer that in spaces that are near and dear to my heart, as well as in concentrated areas that really do have a ripe appetite for folks who need it.
That is awesome. Well, before we get into it, tell me what you're drinking. I'm sipping on my oat milk with a dash of instant coffee. I'm not a real coffee drinker.
Ooh, oat milk with a dash of coffee. That's new. I love it. I'm actually I'm sipping on, this is the pause intentionally mug from Latonia at a Jeune Tea House. And so while I have this mug, it's just a reminder for me to use this moment to really embrace the stillness and savor it. But I'm actually sipping on a green juice that my husband made for me.
Oh, I love that. You know, nothing like a little afternoon green juice to pick us up.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, let's get into it. So, you mentioned that Huru means free. Tell us a little bit about the Huru spaces. Like, for those who don't even know, like, what is this magical thing called Huru? And how do you kind of design spaces so that people can feel a sense of freedom?
Mm, thank you for that. So Huru, we went through so many iterations, and uh, in the very beginning, there was this notion that anyone in the world could go into some kind of spiritual villa and just be held and be cared for, and that would lead to imagining what their promised land looked like, what their future looked like, and really what their freedom looked like. So we believe in this really beautiful relationship between rest and stillness and imagination.
Mm.
Um, and so the concept of someone coming in and being held, it is not a new concept. I know there are, the narrative is really wild right now. There are wildflowers all around this philosophy of rest, and I love it. Beautiful voices like Octavia Rahim and Amanda Miller Littlejohn and
Mm.
that ministry, Trisha. Tracy Stanley, so many beautiful voices. And so we wanted to be a space where once folks have heard the voice, they've really convinced themselves that they are ready. They are truly properly ready to experience it and to take a risk in many cases, to be with themselves, to have communion with themselves, that we're ready to receive them. So it's like, it's a beautiful arc, I think, to I'm going to go get the education, but then I'm going to go receive this experience that I'm investing in to explore what is ready for me in this next season. And for folks who don't know, Huru is an experience, and we have spaces in DC and New York and California, and hopefully soon to be South Africa.
Wow.
Where you come in and we follow a clinical methodology. So we've studied a little bit about stillness and its power across many different faiths or ideologies, but there's also this methodology of We're going to feed you a really nourishing meal curated just for you. There's spiritual symbolism in it. And then we're going to guide you through a practice or an activity that is rooted in rest. And it comes from a repository of practitioners who are amazing. And then we're going to just invite you to rest, whatever that means to you. And so there's a rhythm that we orient folks into. And we oftentimes call it a residency, a rest residency, because you're kind of learning as you go.
Wow.
You're learning this rhythm and you're able to kind of plug it into your life once you return home.
What's the average stay for somebody visiting a Huru space?
Well, we've been very blessed to offer our signature, which is typically a weekend.
Mm.
And that is the cadence of that is actually because of the folks that are gifting it to them. And so there are these organizations or husbands or friends who are gifting the experience to a loved one.
Mm.
And that looks like a weekend. So you come in on a Friday evening, we go through the rhythm, and you stay till a Sunday morning.
Wow, that is beautiful. And come out refreshed and renewed and having eaten some really good food and reflected. That is amazing. So, as you're creating this vision, just tell us about some of the early iterations, some of the things that you thought would work that you ended up having to toss out. Because, it seems so easy to be like, just come and rest. And I suspect it's not.
It's not. It's not. One thing that is, I don't know if it's getting a bad rap or not, but this idea or notion of AI, it's really, we didn't have any sort of anticipation for it in the very beginning. And
Mm.
so the human touch is so magical.
Mm.
And we believe it to be true for every touch point of the experience. I've learned a lot along my career projection, which was marketing, primarily marketing, kind of product development. At the very, very tail end, there was a little bit of tech in there. And so the vision was always, we're going to have a team or a tribe of humans caring for one human.
Mm.
And that's been beautiful, but it's since evolved, and it's evolved to embrace ease, both for those who are serving as well as the one who's being served. So we're not also pouring out, overexerting ourselves as we're serving. It's a mutually nourishing experience. Our practitioners feel nourished, our chefs feel nourished, our hosts feel nourished. And so that two-way kind of commune is really important. The human touch is really important. And that will always be part of the vision.
Yeah.
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 Tell us a little bit about how you started and kind of what made you realize that you had something that was vibrant and real. Like we see these numbers around the growth of wellness tourism. I'm obsessed with wellness real estate, but that you said this can expand. Because when I had a dear friend tell me about you when you started in Brooklyn in DC, and she was like, "There's this place, you should look it up and find out more about it." And you have blown up. Like you have multiple spaces around the country, and she said internationally. Like what sparked that? Oh my goodness, this is really something.
I think it was in the very beginning. I was just doing proof of concept. So Catherine, like when you're in a program or any type of environment that's saying prove yourself, like you might have a good idea, but it might not be viable for the marketplace. We had to seed it to folks who would receive it. And
Okay.
I had to find folks who looked like me, because the origin of Huru is existential crisis. Like I completely burned out, which is how I even discovered what rest was.
Right. Nothing like a good burnout.
And a good burnout that not only impacted me, but impacted my family. So my oldest daughter had a rare skin condition. I had not seen it. I had been working so hard, and I was mortified as a mother. And so any caregiver, whether you're caring for little ones or even elder care, like, there's a feeling in your body, and you have to honor that wisdom from your body to say, oh, you need to change your behavior. The behavior change paradigm was so, so important.
Yeah.
And so the proof of concept was we're going to try this out. I re-careered a little bit by going to pursue another master's really in clinical psychology and spirituality, mind, body. And so I got to understand these tenets of spirituality, entrepreneurship, how to put them together, and
Mm.
then what would grow over the years.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
makes
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell us a little bit, break down how your model works, and how you work with property owners or hosts, as you call them, how people find you, and kind of just a little bit more about what the experience is set up to be.
Yeah, the model is pretty simple. We follow this notion of ease, and so when we find good people, we hold on to them. Um, we have had just subtle invitations or referrals. We decided that in honor of the philosophy of rest, we're not going to market, we're not going to add or contribute to the noise and be really wild out in social media or in other platforms, not because the narrative isn't necessary, but there are already really great people doing it. And so the model is you invest in yourself. You come, you tell us what you want, what you desire, what season of life you're in, what freedom means to you. And then we curate an experience just for you. And
Mm.
that also includes what you're willing to invest. And so we initially started out with a pretty standard package rate that's kind of a one size fit all, and quickly understood that that wasn't the way to go, especially for folks who are fatigued and
That's
experiencing
interesting.
chronic exhaustion. And so the model has originally it was a B2B model. I'm sorry, a B2C model. And then as we started to invite more and more folks outside of our primary circle, foundations and philanthropy organizations just started to hear about it and wanted to gift it to their grantees, grant recipients,
Mm.
national partners, leaders. And so that's been beautiful. So we're hybrid B2B, B2C now.
Wow.
And sometimes we even take a flavor of the weekend into the workplace for a half day experience or a full day experience. So that's been fun too.
Oh my goodness. And do you find that people want to host groups in the Huru experience?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody wants to do this work alone.
Yeah.
I will say, depending on the need, we will recommend what we think is best and what has been impactful in our experience. And so, if someone says, I've just lost my mother, or I'm about to have a new baby, that looks a little different than I've just been promoted to senior vice president and I need to get myself together before I lead a whole culture and team.
Mm.
Depending on the two, or depending on the aspiration, we might make a recommendation on if a group experience or an individual experience makes sense.
That is beautiful. And that actually speaks to your motto, which is intentional spaces for intentional people, which is so beautiful.
Mm.
So I'm so curious, like, who are these intentional people? Tell us all about them. I mean, it in this day and age where news is coming at us a million miles an hour. We all have these magical supercomputers in our pockets and we thought was gonna make life easier. It's just made life intense and you can never turn off. I'm so curious about who decides I'm going for it.
55% of people are searching for the meaning of life at least once a week, which means that
All the time.
what are we doing out here? What are we living for? What are we living for? I will say people don't just stumble into Huru, right? They have
Yeah.
to raise their hand. You have to opt in. Even if it's scary, we have had people say, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts just yet. And so
Mm.
that's a big thing. Oftentimes we recommend kind of putting the phone away so that you are not distracted, even by your beautiful loved ones
Right.
who have the best of intentions. But the folks who are coming in, they have to have a purpose. So they're not coming in kind of haphazardly, which is
Mm.
number one. And number two is the ones who are purpose seeking and eager to understand who they are and whose they are. we have a whole just wraparound care experience for them. And we love that. We love to be able to help folks design and map out what their futures look like. One,
Mm.
because a lot of them are caregivers of little ones. So we want
Caretakers need caretakers.
exactly. They're pouring everything in there. Um, and we also want to model to the next generation what it looks like. So there's this idea of generational peace that's being
Mm.
passed down. There's a generational peace and generational joy that we are combating all the other stuff when they come in.
Mm. Do you have both men and women come? I'm curious what the demographic breakdown is.
Yes, we've been most surprised that men have come to the space and not only come and embraced it, but been our number one champions.
Unreal.
It's been crazy, surreal. Not at all what we had anticipated. In fact, I designed the experience specifically for Black women. So,
Mm.
not even women of color, but Black women who are in
Wow.
professional or corporate spaces. I designed it for them, and it was my love letter to them. And so, for the experience to go beyond these demographics, go beyond bounds, has been beautiful. We have queer, trans folks flying in to
Oh
really
my
experience
goodness.
what stillness feels like. But the men need this.
Do
Like
you find that the experience and kind of your agenda is different for men? Do they need more quiet time?
the experience is not different. The same rhythm
Interesting.
is what we follow. We follow that far food, activity, rest rhythm. It's the same rhythm. I will say though, we try to have male practitioners
Mm.
there to hold them because they really know and they can relate. And so there are a variety of male practitioners that we have in our network.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, when you're talking about kind of physical, emotional, spiritual wellness all in one place, for those who are like hardcore real estate folks, what does that actually look like? Do you have a lot of trinkets? Do you have like, how do you combine them in a kind of a physical space?
Yeah. And you asked about this before. I work with property managers who understand the spirit. Like, I can't
Mm.
work with any property manager who's like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, let's just find an Airbnb. It doesn't work like that.
right.
The space has to be cultivated in such a way that it is unequivocally, hands down, a space of rest. And
Mm.
I've been so fortunate because Lori is my partner and companion here in the DMV, and her eyes and her ears have such a critical and essential soul for finding
Mm.
and discovering space. In fact, the house where we dwell in now it was prayed over, it's blessed well before we even engaged with it. And so it has to foster rest. There are typically no TVs. There is
Mm.
typically natural light. It is very minimalist.
Mm.
And in the DMV, which is our flagship, so I refer to it often, that house, we call it the still house. Every room has a purpose. So it's a
Mm.
beautiful, huge stone Tudor home, but every room has a purpose. You're moving through the house with such intention. Um, and we really desire for it to be that way.
That is beautiful. Well, I am sure that as you've been going through this, there are always surprises. So, what are some of the things that have surprised you as you've been on this journey?
Yeah, the biggest surprise, the demographic was a major surprise. That was an insight that we couldn't have anticipated, even if we wanted to. So that was a huge one, just the variety of folks coming in. I think
Mm.
another surprise is oftentimes when folks hear about rest, it goes to this restoration, right? Like we go into the how do we replenish, how do we restore? But
Yeah.
the rest also happens in the beginning. And
Mm.
so it could be the beginning of a journey, not the
Mm.
end or not a reactive part to a journey. So
Mhm.
I love the idea of, we went from people who were really, we launched in 2020. And so people were really tired after George Floyd was murdered, after COVID had been declared an emergency around the world. Folks were already tired. And so they had to replenish, to get back to equilibrium. But now the folks who are coming are really excited to learn who they are. Like, they are really like, how do I imagine a freedom just for me?
Wow.
That's
Wow.
for. That's how we imagine it. We have to create the spaciousness to even receive, to be in the posture of receiving. So that's been a huge surprise. And then there are folks like the All States of the world or the Best Buys of the world who are like, we need Huru. Can you come? Can you talk to our team about post-traumatic growth and what rest means in that context?
Mm.
Can you guide our partners in relationship abuse? Even just
Ooh.
the other day, we were having a meeting, and one of our Allstate clients says, we're following this Diddy case. And I'm like, really? This Diddy case?
You think?
That's the litigation and the impact on survivors will
Yeah.
absolutely impact the mental health of folks.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
can we invite stillness into that? So those are surprises also that I'm just, I'm grateful to understand. And also, there's a balance of how much we entertain and also care for
Mm.
in the space.
So that actually leads me to my next question is like, what does the next chapter look like? Because you're touching on so many different things, from not just people needing rest, but needing space to dissect what we're all like seeing and feeling, and this desire not to just accept the status quo. Like, it's encouraging that employers are like, no, 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 we want to pause and actually understand, how does this show up in the workplace and how do we better support our team members? And I will say, in the fall of DEI, one of the things that has been very, very encouraging is to see that so many people have tried to think outside the box. Like, okay, what now? Right? Like, all right, so we're no longer in the immediate grief of George Floyd, but we've learned so much, and we want to embrace our team members in a way that we now know is really important. So, what does that next chapter look like?
Yeah, that's great. So we are working to expand. We oftentimes talk about the macro, meso, micro, the complexity of the adversity that one might be experiencing, one human in any given breath might be experiencing. And the intimate expansion is what our next season looks like. So we know that Black Americans, or those who have been traditionally categorized in marginalized communities, are experiencing an exponential amount of exhaustion. It's not only happening here, it's actually happening elsewhere. So if you think about the folks who are in South Africa, who have just served in the Foreign Service, for example, and are now experiencing a RIF or what have you, those folks who had built some type of community through their work are now isolated. And so how can we show up for the diaspora beyond the bounds of the United States? And I think that there is a learning where we're going to go back and forth. We're going to learn, take the insight, take it to another market, see how it plays, come back, use that insight here. So there's a call and response, so to speak, when we talk about care that crosses borders. But what we really want to see is there's a World Happiness Index, and oftentimes the African countries are at the bottom of that index, and we want to see them rise. We want to see joy show up for folks who are of African descent but haven't made it home yet. We want folks to sit their feet in the soil and just be held by the space and the spirit that lives there. So we're excited to kind of explore the next season on the continent and motherland, as well as around in other places. There's thoughts of Jamaica and exploration there. And there's a lot. And as folks who are in DEI are experiencing what's in their bodies, we are building a collective to support them as well. And so that's exciting, just to be
beautiful
there. Yeah.
So that leads me to, like, if you're going around the world, what does that look like? Like, you talked about Jamaica.
Yeah.
I suspect Brazil is in there. Some of these other just beautiful, wonderful, magical places. But yeah,
We
who
of
around the
course have
world?
target markets. But really, we're going to go where the ease is. So
Yeah.
right now we're exploring. Johannesburg has a beautiful soul there. Kim is her name, and she actually hosts retreats on the continent specifically for American women, for Black American women. And so she's been to places like Nantamsna, which is a world-class Black hotelier in Morocco, and taken
Yeah.
there. She now has a space in Joburg, excited to invite folks there, the Gengaki House. And so that's exciting just to be wrapped around. She is also a culinary soul. So we'll talk a little bit there about what that looks and feels like. We're also going to be learning. We're in a learning season. We're in a creative season. And so it's not always like, how can we hold space every single day of the year? How can we learn from those spaces who have done it really well? Think about the places like Dubai or the Middle East, who have a ministry of family in their government, where it's taken a whole different aspect of life and
Right.
centered the family, or places like
Yeah.
Bhutan, whose
Yeah.
economy thrives off of happiness and not off
Yes.
the GDP. So learning different infrastructures that impact the economy, climate, social determinant factors, health. That's where we're going.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, so I could talk to you forever, but recognizing we have like 2 minutes left, what advice do you have for others who are coming into the field, who are saying, I want to try this out, test out a model? It's so great to see diverse players really expand into wellness, because wellness is for everybody. But what would you say for those looking to get into the field?
That's such a great question. Again, as I try to decolonize this very Western way of strategy building, the biggest thing I'd say is hone into your body. Your body will give you the wisdom of which direction to go. It'll be very, very clear, the yeses and the nos.
Yeah.
Yeses and the nos will become very clear when you're honed into your body, and when you have the right tribe around you to hold you accountable to that.
Yeah.
And so there has to be, we talk about the scientific theory of happiness, and much of that is in community. We see it with the blue zones. We see it with ancient civilizations, the Chinese civilization, the African civilization. Like, community is everything. Hone into, and it doesn't have to be massive. It can be a community of three,
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Little
And,
powerhouse.
yeah. Do what feels good to you. Don't follow the trend. Do what feels good to you.
That is wonderful. Well, it is such a treat to talk to you. I'm so proud of everything that you've done, and really grateful that I came across you. You're such a leader in this space. So
Thank
it's
you,
so
Catherine.
talk to
We've
you.
been fanning each other for quite some time, so I'm glad.
Yes, and enjoy your afternoon smoothie.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for watching. See you next time. Bye.